What's going on, guys? You might be wondering why I have these bands around the proximal ends of my arms or at the very top. You also might be wondering why I'm struggling and making such a face with such light dumbbells. The reason I have these bands on today is that I'm training something called blood flow restriction training, or BFR, or some people even call it occlusion training. And the reason I'm making that face and struggling with light dumbbells is because when you use this method, it burns. So let's get into the science behind it. So essentially, blood flow restriction training just cuts off the venous output of the metabolic waste and the lactic acids that build up in the site as you're doing the work. So what I mean by that is that when you're training a muscle, the arteries carry nutrients and blood to the site, lactic acid and all these metabolic wastes build up, and the veins, they take it away so you can continue to do more work typically. Now essentially, when we cut off the venous output, that lactic acid stays there, it burns more, and it causes more cellular swelling. Now cell swelling is a very anabolic signal. Now when you're trying to build or preserve muscle, you want to be as anabolic as possible. You see, the opposite of being anabolic is catabolic. And things that can make you catabolic, which is not good for strength or building muscle or even preserving muscle, are things like an excessive amount of cardio. And I say excessive because cardio is good for you. You should do it. Just too much of a good thing is not a good thing. Too much training, too much volume and intensity that your body just simply can't recover from. And either extreme or prolonged calorie deficit, high stress and poor stress management, or even poor sleep can make you catabolic. And you need to be the opposite. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get into how to perform blood flow restriction training or occlusion training. Now, as I mentioned earlier, too much of a good thing is not always a good thing. There's a sweet spot for all of this. And what I mean by that when it comes to blood flow restriction training is that you're gonna have to come down in weight, right? So if I usually use 45 or 50-pound dumbbells for my bicep curls, when I slap these bands on, I'm going for high reps, and I'm only using about 50 or 60% of the regular weight that I typically use. And when I say high reps, I'm talking about anything from 15, 20, 25, maybe even 30 reps in some cases. If you don't have dumbbells, you could use bands and get an equal effect with this. Now, when it comes to the site of where to cut off the blood flow, you want to be in the proximal end of the limb. And what I mean by that is up here close to the heart is proximal, and down here close to the hand is distal. In terms of tightness and how tight to go, I usually recommend that my clients do about a 7 or an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10 in tightness for the arms. And then we go to the legs, we do up here near the groin and the top of the quad and under the glute. That's like a 9 or a 10. When you're training your legs for that, you can really just be doing body weight squats and high reps. You can be doing leg extensions on a machine or even hamstring curls or even calf raises. Now when you train your calf raises, that site is still the same site, the proximal site. Now, interesting backstory as to how blood flow restriction training got started. It actually started in a medical setting. Now, what they did was they took patients that were bedridden in a hospital setting. They're not using their bodies, they're not eating very much, so naturally they start to atrophy or lose their muscle. So what they did was that they took these bedridden hospital patients and split them into two groups. One was just the regular sedentary group that didn't eat much, and the other was the same group, but they put a tourniquet around the proximal end of their leg, and on every patient, they measured their quad muscle density. So after a certain amount of time, they remeasured their quad muscle density, and those that had the tourniquet lost far less muscle than those that didn't. I just thought that was pretty cool. Now some of you are still in lockdown, some of you are doing band workouts, or you have light dumbbells at home, or just body weight workouts, and that's fine, that's awesome. You can actually still build muscle that way if you do it correctly. But I thought I'd just give this to you guys today because a lot of people are asking me, hey, I'm losing muscle, what can I do? So blood flow restriction training is one way to do it. Outside of lockdown, I always have my clients that travel and like stay in hotels a lot, take these occlusion bands that you can get them on Amazon relatively cheap. You can just use a tourniquet. And by the way, for your legs, you can use your knee wraps for squatting, for example. But you know, it is a good way to preserve muscle or even build a little bit more. Again, absolutely crucial. You can mess this up. So just 3 to 4 sets of 15 to 25, 30 reps once or twice a week per muscle group. You do not need more than this. In fact, you can really mess things up if you do more. But you can also really mess things up if you squat improperly or deadlift improperly or even bench press improperly, right? Just be smart about it. All right, guys, I hope this helps. Get yourself some occlusion bands or blood flow restriction training bands on Amazon. They're like 10 bucks. And use a bigger band for your legs. Feel the burn. Let me know how it goes. If you have any questions, go ahead and DM me and I'll always get back to you. All right, guys, take it easy.